This is Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing a brand new theatrical work called Frankenstein A.I, a modern play adaptation based on the 19th century novel by Mary Shelley. In this podcast series, we thought it would be interesting to discuss the stories and themes expressed in Frankenstein A.I. in greater detail, to not only deepen and enrich yours and our understanding, but for the sheer pleasure of it. Throughout the series, we'll talk with special guests and discuss things such as the morality and ethics around creating artificial general intelligence, whether AGI can be considered a friend or foe, hazard or tool, the value and quality of human relationships, transhumanism and what it means to be human, as well as the tensions between a creator and the created. What makes our podcast unique is that you'll also get an insider's look at the many artistic and production decisions that are made in putting together a theatrical production as we develop this original work. So sit back and settle in for a stimulating dive into deep ideas and the world of theater magic. And we're here for episode 6 of the Telling the Story podcast. I'm very excited. Today, we're going to talk about the creator and the created, both in terms of human beings and who we are, but also in terms of the relationship between creators and art and technology as well, and sort of the tensions that can arise between a creator and its created, both spiritually, of course, and both in terms of the tensions that can arise from an AI android that goes amok in the story of Frankenstein AI. So I'm joined here again today with George Dutch. George is the playwright of Frankenstein A.I. George has been with Ninth Hour Theatre Company since 2010. And George has been on the directing side of things with various productions, as well as in a variety of shows as well. George recently was an editor and dramaturge for the audio drama Beauty Will Save the World, which came out in 2024. George believes theater is good for engaging with the big ideas that are associated with our society and the culture that we live in. So welcome back, George.
I'm very happy to be here for the last podcast of Frankenstein AI.
That's right. And I'm also joined by someone new today. Alexandria Poskus. Alexandria is one of the performing artists working on Frankenstein AI. We've met weekly this entire spring, and we've developed George's play with a lot of great discussion and a lot of fun in play. Alexandria is a very thoughtful and talented performing artist. She was last in The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 2024 on stage with Ninth Hour Theatre Company. In which she also got to play the role of Quasimodo in that play because various actors played that role. Before that, Alexandria played Mrs. Beaver in the 2023 production of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Fun fact, George was Mr. Beaver in the 2018 production of that show.
The two beavers.
Welcome, Mrs. Beaver. Welcome, Alexandria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's dig right in. But before I do, I wanted to dedicate this episode of the Telling the Story podcast to Bert Hopkins. He recently passed away, and his funeral is actually today while we're recording. George was very good friends with Bert, and Bert was also a supporter of Ninth Hour and came to many of our shows. So we just wanted to acknowledge that we lost a friend recently and lost a Ninth Hour supporter. Yeah. So yeah,
rest in peace, Bert.
Indeed. So we want to talk today about creation, about the creator, about being made in God's image and God's likeness. It's something always just so worth discussing. It's not deeply discussed often. There's so much mystery about it, I think, as well, which I think you were saying earlier too, Alexandria. But yeah, let us start with your initial thoughts, perhaps, on what does it mean to be made in God's image? What are some of your initial thoughts That term is thrown out a lot. What does it mean to be made in the likeness of God? What does that look like? Let's start somewhere. George, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, again, we can only go by what's been revealed to us, primarily through Scripture, through nature, and of course, preeminently through the person of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. On being made in the image of God. That's the beginning of the biblical story. That's been very influential, of course, in shaping our society. So being made in the image of God really is a big project to understand, because God has both a nature that is bounded by time and space, but also a nature that transcends time and space. So this is part of the mystery and the beauty of it all. And Adam and Eve, of course, were the first human beings that God created. And so we learn a lot about the image of God in the first chapter of Genesis and through the book of Genesis. And humans were created to walk with God in the Garden of Eden, to be his companions, to socialize with him, if you will. Mm-hmm. And of course, we know what happened in chapter 3 of Genesis, that they sort of betrayed that trust and that love, and they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. And the human story, the story of fallen humanity, begins there. So that's a good place to start. maybe Alexandria would like to ask.
Yeah, that is a good place to start. And it's my understanding, too, that the Genesis story is an account that Christians, Jews, and Muslims all share, I believe. I think I had an imam on a panel discussion for the play Creation of the World and Other Business by Arthur Miller, which you were involved with, George. And I think we discussed the creation story at length and all these things. Yeah. Yeah. So the Genesis account is a good place to start, of course. And that's what people refer to often, talking about being made in God's image and both male and female, he made them and all that fun stuff. And of course, it's a well-debated book and lots of different topics and themes and ideas come out of that story and those stories. But yeah, what are some of your initial thoughts about what does it mean to be made in God's image, Alexandria?
Yeah, it's a really complex question. Like you said, I don't think it's discussed in depth enough. I know growing up in a Christian home, sometimes the made in God's image can just kind of be passed around. So yeah, just diving into a little bit more has been really cool, just to see what it could mean, or what God's revealed to us. And I think George revealed that, or said that a lot of it is revealed in Genesis, and again later throughout Jesus Christ in the New Testament. But I think in Genesis, when Adam and Eve were created, we kind of see three main areas that we can kind of see that we're made in the image of God, either like mentally, like the free will ability to choose, which God gave right from the beginning, of choosing to be with him or to eat from the tree of knowledge. So whenever we like invent or create or choose, we're proclaiming that we're created in God's image. But then there's also socially, like George mentioned, we're meant to like be with the Lord. We're supposed to walk with him. Adam walked with the Lord.
Like so relational.
Yeah, relational. So like even God
choice, relational. These are so far two things you're saying that really are, like there's something about those two things that are like, that's a God thing and that's a human thing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of what I've seen. Like just even God himself is relationship before humans. He is triune. There's three persons in one, which is a whole complex thing in itself. So maybe not dive into that.
That's another podcast episode.
But he started in relationship. He is in relationship. And so when he created us for a relationship, to bear his image, and then morally.
That's such a hard concept to grasp, huh? To be in relationship prior to being in relationship, like in the sense that within yourself, there's relationship. Like, wow.
Yeah. And then morally in Genesis, like 1:31, it says that like, God created us and we were very good. And so just the righteousness and the holiness that we held prior to chapter 3 in Genesis, prior to the fall. So these are kind of the things that
interesting.
I've dived into some of the commentaries and articles about it. And I think these things set us apart from other parts of nature. But then I've also heard comments about, what about, these are abilities, but what about the status the image. I don't think it's physical. It says that God is spirit. So I don't personally think that God has 10 fingers, 10 toes.
Right. Right.
But the ability and status, I think, is where it means to be created in God's image.
Ability and status, and those are the three things you laid out. Morality in common with God, or at least the propensity to have morality, and then the other two. Being in relationships, being relational, and having choice. Yeah. Now, of course, another very debated thing is whether everything is, predestined, or how much agency do you have? Is it like Neo in the Matrix, blue pill, red pill? Is it like, like how much is written, in stone, written, predestined for us? Yeah. And so I'm interested. Yeah, it's interesting. And it's always easy to sort of imagine being made in God's image being a physical, visible thing. And even, thinking like, that, and especially we were mentioning too, like the first two humans. And then you think to yourself, well, what did they look like? If they're the first two humans, it's like, what did they look like, and how tall were they, and did they have 10 fingers and 10 toes, the first two humans? I don't know, and then of course other people believe the humans evolved from another species, right? Another earth species of sorts, and again, I don't really know, but I tend to believe there's something special about humans, and and I do believe there's a creator, and you know what I mean? So it's fun to like explore this. I heard from, the great late Rabbi Bolka one time. We were talking, and he was telling me about a different understanding of the Genesis account, only in the sense that, when it came to like gender, and I found, or sex, I guess you could say. And I found it interesting that so God first made Adam, is sort of as the story goes, right? And then Adam is made in God's image, right? But if Adam is by themselves prior to Eve ever existing, is Adam a man? What is Adam? If man is opposite woman, woman's opposite man, kind of thing. Well, if Adam has the fullness of God in being made in the fullness of God's image right away, but then Eve was made, as the story goes, out of Adam by taking out a rib. I always found that story interesting. So in a sense, like Eve was like within Adam, like the woman was taken from the man. And anyhow, I'm just saying that story because I remember it like really blew my mind about, again, the concept of being made in God's image, that in the account of Genesis, both male and female are made in God's image, but it's interesting because it sort of suggests that neither is like the image, as you were pointing out, Alexandra, neither is the sort of like the physical, literal aspect of God, because God is spirit, God is creator, God is in relationship. Anyhow, it kind of blows your mind. It's really hard to think about, and of course we always use male pronouns for God too, because it's the default. It's easy. It's what the scriptures have written as and stuff, and it's easy to get lost in the concept of that. But again, too, there's this Father God concept too, which is a very masculine thing. So it's very interesting, all this concept of being made in God's image.
Can I just jump in there? And some people must be wondering why we're talking about this in the context of Frankenstein A.I.
Of course, yeah.
And the creator created theme runs throughout the story of Frankenstein, which is about a young scientist called Victor Frankenstein, who creates this creature out of mechanical parts and the limbs and organs of cadavers, of corpses. And the story is about this relationship between the scientist and his creation. And he created it as a kind of a new Adam, a new species, but then rejects it when he sees how ugly this creation is, and basically walks away from it. And the author, Mary Shelley, she saw a lot of parallels between her story and Paradise Lost. So in the way that Victor rejected his creature was similar to the way that God rejected Satan. So it's interesting to think about the creation and the creator and the creation in that context. That's why we're talking about.
Well, yeah. And don't you think it was interesting, Alexandra, the journey we had with Victor's creation? We started off almost naively, because his creation's name is Adam I. So Adam I, right? So like it has the word Adam in it. And it's even spelled like Adam and then like AI. And it rhymes with Adonai, which means
Adonai, which is a play on the word, the Hebrew word for God, Adonai.
Adonai.
Adonai, not Adamai. But I chose Adonai specifically for that reason. So it would resonate.
Yeah.
Because one of the themes of Frankenstein and of my adaptation is this playing God, which is part of this series that we're talking about.
It's a very clever name, and it's a very clever play. Again, it's the firstborn, first created android in the world of the play. So naming it Adam I, like Adam AI, basically, but rhyming it with Adonai, which means God, and they kind of look to that character that android as like a god, or some of them do, like some of the scientists do. And even at one point, the AI character, I think, demands that Victor, like obey and serve him, like, as he is like superior. It is superior. But Alexandria, I was going to ask you, wasn't it interesting in our workshops, the journey we were on, where at first we were calling Adamai, like we were always saying he's going to do this, he's that, and our language evolved to calling it more. Mm-hmm. And we also, through workshopping, found it interesting that if the android would like become whatever it needed to be and mimic other characters, so it could look like a woman or a little boy or a man, because it was a mimicking AI, and that wasn't originally sort of the thought in the writing of the play, right, George? I mean, that was something Alexandria and the rest of the artists were workshopping. And yeah, what did you think about that idea that the creation and the story like kind of evolved as we workshop the play,
Yeah, it was really cool to see the evolving of the characters through the workshop. I think that one was a really cool development, because why wouldn't it? Like, it's an innate nature of, like, when you don't have morality, if you don't have feelings, then why wouldn't you try to mimic to get by, to serve, to pursue your purpose, I guess. And so, yeah, with that element, it makes sense, because that's what, to a lower level, that's what ChatGPT does. It adapts and responds to all of your prompts, to all of what you say, like, make it more casual, make it funny, make it, generate this photo, but make it cuter. Like, it adapts and responds to all of your promptings. So why wouldn't the android also adapt and change according to its prompting? So if someone is sad and it knows logically that it is right to give empathy, then why wouldn't it mimic empathy, even though it doesn't feel it? So it's not true empathy, but it can mimic it well, because rationally, logically, it understands that this situation requires empathy. So I will mimic and show it.
Right. Which, do you feel like as humans, sometimes if we don't have the capacity to do certain things that we maybe were made to do, like empathy is a good example, we also can perform it?
Oh, 100%.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Like, we also can mimic it because we know that the right situation, if we hear something sad, is to respond sad, or to respond kind or compassionate. But sometimes, like, our capacity or our selfish nature gets in the way. And so we say the right words, but our hearts are completely the opposite, or completely the wrong way. And sometimes it's noticed and sometimes it isn't. And so, yeah, we can definitely respond more on the android side than the human way that we were created to be.
And that was your third of the things you were saying, the sort of general things you're saying that reflect like being made in the image of God. One of them was morality, at least the capacity for morality, the propensity to have morality. I heard one minister say one time to me that morality, it's like a warehouse. It has to be stocked. It doesn't just develop randomly overnight. It develops through pain, through teaching, through lessons, through failures, through hurt, through forgiveness, through empathy, through all sorts of things. We're modeled it. We're shown morality, at least in the best case scenarios, right? That And if you don't, like, you're going to get it from somewhere. You're going to get it from the movies or from somewhere else. I mean, people debate this all the time, whether people are naturally good or have to be taught to be good. But I think you nailed something, Alexandria. It's sort of like, we do know, okay, empathy is required here. And even if I don't feel any, I'm going to be a good person, quote unquote, I'm going to muster up the right behavior, or, it's the right behavior to do this, give this thing over here, whatever, even though I don't really want to do it. But I feel like it's kind of what it's expected of me. And I find, sometimes when humans are in crisis or in times of anxiety or fear, our true morality can come out because we're not being as sort of performative. At this point, we're just in survival mode. So we're just,
And even if somebody is performing empathy or some other emotion or morality, often it's just benign. It's harmless. It's innocuous.
Right.
It becomes dangerous when, for example, it's used by a psychopath to simulate or a certain emotion, like empathy, in order to control or manipulate somebody else for their purpose. And that's one of the aspects that we explored with artificial general intelligence through Atom-I, through the android. If they develop that capacity to simulate genuine emotion, human emotion, in such a way that they use it to manipulate or control humans for some other purpose.
Right. Yeah, because even humans do that. So an AI could be quite good at it in theory, right? Right. Okay. Yeah. So morality. Yeah. Choice. I like that you brought up choice too, Alexandria. If we're made in God's image, and God can create, because we're here, we're going to acknowledge that God, there's a creator God. Of course, others can dispute that, and that's fine. I'm always open to having conversations about that too. But yeah, if God can create and there's a creator, that means we can create, right? And if God can, once again, believing that God's loving, right? If God can love, then we can love. And if God can forgive, maybe we can forgive even our enemies. If God can build things and grow things, we can build in communities and grow as people. And so that, but I guess it's also true, as you pointed out, Alexandria, in the choice aspect, that if we can create, we can destroy. If we can love, we can hate. If we can build, we can kill. We can seek revenge, and we can fracture communities and cut off relationships as well. So what does that? How does this relate to God, and what does that tell us about God, and what? What is it? What is it? I don't even know what I'm trying to ask. So of course, I guess it means I guess my question is this, are we always living out this idea of being made in God's image? Are we always reflecting that image, no matter if we do bad things? Does that alter that our image, or being made in God's image, reflect? Is it a matter of bearing the image? Are we bearing that image well? Are we not bearing it well? Yeah. What does it mean if we're going around killing, destroying, and hurting? And what's happening here? Is that individual not made in God's image, or not bearing the image? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy question.
But, it wasn't easy to come up with the question either. I was didn't know where I was going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that in scripture, it talks a lot about how, in the New Testament, after when Jesus' time, and then Jesus died and resurrected and bridged the gap between us and the Father once again. It talks a lot about being renewed in the image of God. It talks a lot about creating a new self, like God, in righteousness and holiness. So,
there's that verse, new creation, the old has passed away, the new has come.
Yeah. So there's a lot of verses about old and new. And I think in the Old Testament, in the creation process, we were in the image of God. But when we chose to sin and we chose to rebel against God, we still bear the image of God, but it's also marred and scarred by sin and the destruction of the world. And so we do have the ability to destroy and kill and revenge and hate and all these things. But when we act out of those things, I don't believe that is being an ambassador of Christ. I think it's rebelling against our true nature. But it's through the grace of God and the grace of Jesus Christ that we can be renewed back into the fullness of the image of God that he originally created for us. And I believe that in this world, it's never going to be perfect. I think it's a continual process. I still choose selfishness. I still choose pride. I still choose these things in my life. And I'm constantly being renewed back into the image of Christ. And I believe that at the end of my life, when I'm with Jesus, with God, that will be perfected. But in this world, because of sin, because of destruction, it's a constant renewal. It's constant dying to yourself. And it's to die, not me who lives, but Christ that lives in me. So I think, kind of to your question, the more negative or destructive actions we take is a rebellion against our image of God.
Okay. And not a rebellion, not living up to the image, been given this grand seal of the king, this mark of the king that we're just not doing anything well with, that we're, I'm just thinking out loud, but thanks, Alexandria. George, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the Old Testament is a basic, after Genesis chapter 3, it's all about the rebellion against God, a rejection of God, right? And God trying to, or always calling his people back to him, back to his nature of love and mercy and judgment and community. And repeatedly, the people that he's chosen to follow him reject that or rebel against it. And that's been the story of human history. So we have these two grand narratives in our society today. We have that meta narrative, the grand narrative of the biblical story, which we've been discussing here. And then we have that other grand narrative that you alluded to, that humanity has evolved from nature and has progressed to the state that we are today. And it has done that without any influence of God. That's another kind of rejection of God. And it's the story that atheists believe, that humanists believe, that Marxists believe, that communists believe, and so on. So it's another kind of rejection of God and a replacing of that grand narrative with another grand narrative, which is the evolving of humanity through nature. And both of those stories have consequences. They're played out in the real world. In Frankenstein A.I, we see that clash of cultures or that clash of worldviews.
Oh, yes, definitely.
In both the grand narrative of the biblical story as well as the grand narrative of man's evolution. And they both have consequences. And we are faced with those consequences in different ways in our society by the choices that we make. And those choices have consequences, both good and bad.
Have you ever, either of you, created something? And of course the answer is yes, I'm sure. And what did it feel like to create? Did you find it to be a spiritual experience for you at all, or not? No judgment either way. And then, tell me about a time you created something and how it felt, and if at all you reflected upon you actively creating something, like in the sense that you were created and now you're creating. Did you feel like you were co-creating with anybody? Just tell me about a time, in your life where you created something and how you felt. Yeah.
Okay, I'll start off.
Yeah.
These two grand narratives, I lived the first half of my life according to the second narrative.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I more or less operated on the assumptions of the narrative that man has evolved through nature, and spent the second half of my life trying to honor that first story. So I created out of the evolutionary story, and basically for self-aggrandizement, for out of pride, out of hubris, trying to show off to other people that I was clever, that I was smart, that I understood certain things. And now I prefer to create out of the first narrative of honoring God or glorifying God through the kind of work that I do, paying attention to that story, the innate morality that goes with it, the ethical system that goes with it, and try to help with human flourishing in a way that honors or glorifies that first narrative, the biblical narrative.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm always impressed when someone creates something and finishes it, and there's always like, wow. But then there's big and small like achievements there, right? Like creating the little small thing for your kitchen table. It is beautiful in itself. And then there's creating a community, creating a nonprofit that like does something to help. Like there's like vast, like different scales of creating and stuff. But yeah, tell me about a time you created something, Alexandria, and how it made you feel. Was it did you find it to be a spiritual act in all? Was it intentional? Was it surprising? Yeah. What did you find?
Yeah. So I've been a creative for a long time. I think ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. So I would perform for my parents all the time. I would put on shows for them. I was in theater from a young age. So I acted for a lot. I was very creative. Like in my birthday parties by the age of 13, I decided I was going to take over planning my birthday parties for my mom. And I did all of the decor myself. So I would go to thrift shops and pick out all the things and create it. And my mom wouldn't let me talk about my birthday till like 22 days before. My birthday was on April 22nd. So April 1st was when I was allowed to start talking about my birthday. Oh, that's hilarious. Otherwise, I wouldn't stop talking about it. But one of the times I remember is I was up really late the night before my party. And I was setting up the final decor because I'll do the whole bottom floor of our house. Like every room was a different theme according to the theme of my party. So cute. So it was quite intense. My friends saw my birthday as a holiday. Like it was fun. And I remember being up really late one night trying to set everything up. And my mom kind of asked, like, why are you doing this? And I said, like, I just wanted to bring joy to my friends. And I just wanted to be a good time for them. Like I loved my birthdays because it gave me opportunity to create something and then invite others to enjoy it as well. And so that's, I don't know if at that age I would have recognized that it was like a spiritual experience. Right. But looking back and like seeing of all the different creation process I've done now and getting to know God more in the way that he creates and how it is out of pleasure, it is out of enjoyment and creativity and relationship, then I realized that from a young age, like innately, I just wanted to create to bring joy and pleasure to others so that others could see God, that they would be able to see God through what I created. So yeah, that's would be one of my experiences.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Were your parents creative, would you say? Like, did you find, you know what I mean? Were they creative in this similar way at all? Or?
They were creative in very different ways. Yeah. My dad was more the adventurous type, so he was creative like outdoors. And then my mom was creative in hospitality. So that was her and writing. So like all like my
just creating ability. Community and warmth and a place where people can gather and be and
that's what she created, a home environment for more people than just her family.
Wow.
And so
no small thing.
No, it wasn't. So that I admire her now having my own home. I admire her so much for it. And I hope that I would be able to create what she created. Or something different because we're different people. So to create something like she created of creating a home for more people than just the people living in the house.
I like that idea, creating a home. Like we almost don't talk that way very much anymore, but it's so important. It's not just some dwelling you live in, right? There's this idea of creating a home and creating a home for others, not just the people you live with. This interesting concept. Yeah, were your parents creative, George, would you say?
Gee, I hope I'm not being harsh or unfair to them. But
observably so. It's an opinion, right?
Yeah,
based on your observations.
No, my parents were both hardworking people, but I don't remember there being an atmosphere or a spirit of creativity in our home.
Interesting. And my dad was a physical education teacher, and my mom is a nurse, and they were both very creative as well, interestingly. So they're in the sciences, but my dad was always making some art project. He was the one that painted murals at the school. They were always gardening, creating a beautiful garden, creating beautiful property, creating fences, creating, my dad would just create all sorts of stuff, like, in the sense of like constructing things tool wise, but also creating art. And my mom, she could draw. And anyhow, it was weird. Like, it was like, and then I just naturally loved creating as a kid in an extreme way. I would argue, looking back now and having worked with kids and youth myself, I was extreme. I suppose that doesn't surprise either of you that as a kid, I was creative, but I was. And I just remember, like, your story, Alexandria, reminded me of creating, like, every time there was a birthday, I would create a banner, like a lengthy, long banner that goes across the length of the room, that happy birthday to whoever's name it was. And you're coloring in every giant letter. And it just was so pleasurable. And you're just sitting in your room coloring it. And it was your gift. It was your gift. You didn't have money. You didn't have anything else. But you're going to make that birthday special. You're going to make that event special. You're going to make that person feel special. And there's something about creating environments and opportunities for others to engage with life and flourish or encounter God that is profoundly rewarding and pleasurable. And even every production that Ninth Hour does, that I've been part of any leadership on and making it happen, there's this huge feeling of like satisfaction in creating something, and creating something with other people is like next level experience. Like, it's like this, like, co-creating with others and cooperating and collaborating to just make it happen is so beautiful. And in creating like a piece of art or something, even, or in the examples you were giving about hospitality and these other things, if God is a creator, I often find too, I do often intentionally find it a spiritual act. Like, I can't help but feel something awesome is happening, that something is being created out of nothing. But then there's this idea of being co-creators with God. And some people believe that and some people don't. That nothing that exists, everything that we create as humans already exists, and we're simply assembling it in together from the pieces, if you know what I mean. We're not really creating anything. But I don't think I believe that, in the sense that I think we do create. Perhaps we're co-creating. Perhaps it's also true that everything that exists already does exist, I suppose. But there is still an idea of co-creating, in that, but we're putting it together in a way that's beautiful and nice. And it's often inspired by people's faith, by their pain, by their joy, by all sorts of things. And even in theater, an actor is co-creating with the director, who's co-creating with the playwright. The playwright starts with the playwright. The director interprets that and creates something out of it with the set designer and the lighting designer, and the actor is doing their part and co-creating collaboratively with the other actors and the director. Certainly at Ninth Hour, that's true. We're very collaborative and in that sense. So And
I tried to reflect some of that collaboration in the scene where Frankenstein is created by a group of scientists collaborating together.
Yes.
Because science is a kind of creation as well, right?
Absolutely.
Innovation, new technologies, and so on.
Absolutely.
Are the end result of a creative process. And I tried to capture some of that in scene 3, where they do create the android.
Yeah, great point about like technology. It's not just art, right? It's not just the opportunity. It's not. We've talked about creating community, creating opportunity, creating a home. Creating art, creating aesthetic things that are beautiful. We've talked about writing plays, but let's not forget about technology and innovating and creating machines that aid humanity. These people that can build homes, these people that can build computers. I mean, it's insane. It's very creative in a different way. It's very, again, is this us reflecting God's image, that we can't help ourselves but innovate and create? And then I guess the question, when does that go too far? When do we replace God and are playing God and are creating to the point that we do just because we can does it mean we have to? And we should, right? So what, going into technology, George, as you pointed out, the scientists in the play, they're working together. They're very creative and all that. And it's and that's great. And there's lots of things that we need people to create in the world of technology and medicine and all sorts of other things. But of course, in the play and with AI, what's the need? Why are we creating? Why make AI in our image? Why does AI sound like humans? What's behind that? Like, why do we want a chat GBT that sounds like a human? Why is that necessary? Why can't it sound like a robot and that's good enough? What is our drive, do you think, to make AI, to make things in our image? What's behind that? And is it possible that technology and AI or computers is actually ultimately passively shaping us into its image, into the image of machine? We did that in a workshop once this spring. I don't know if you were there for that one, Alexandria, where we just showed the evolution of humans becoming more computer-like as they got older, and it was fascinating. We weren't even intending it. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this? What's the drive of wanting to make things in our image, including God? Like, how many times do we worship a God or believe in a God that's really, there's something off about, like, the God is actually convenient to us and made in our image rather than us in his image? What are your thoughts on that, George and Alexandria? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions in there. I think it brought me back to when Adam I yells at Victor, obey, and just thinking of how many times do we yell at God and just ask God to obey our demands and what we want, and how small of a view we see God if we just want our demands.
Right.
We can't see the whole picture. We can't see everything. And yet we still demand that God satisfies our immediate desires.
Right.
So yeah,
or we don't believe in him. Fine. Then there is no God. I don't get my immediate desires. So there can't be a God.
Exactly.
We sort of conclude.
Yeah, exactly.
or there is one. He just doesn't care about me, or he's mean,
which that one is, I think, really sad, because God loves us. He cares for us. He desires good things for us. And yet sometimes the most loving thing is to say no. Being not being a parent yet, but having my parents have said no to me many, many times growing up, and looking back, I see, I understand why you held those things back from me. But I didn't understand. I threw a fit as a kid. And so as an adult, I don't think we're that much different with God.
You mean I can't eat the entire bucket of candy in one sitting? Why not? Yeah. What are your thoughts, George?
Well,
and maybe answer the other part of the question there that I was asking you too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the urge to create, the aspiration to create is very human. And I think that's part of being made in the image of God, who made the universe ex nihilo, out of nothing, right? We don't create out of nothing. We have only what the resources that are available to us. We don't create new elements.
Right.
Air,
we have colors
and fire.
We didn't invent the colors.
Right,
there
exactly.
are colors.
So we can recombine them, reconstitute them in new ways to create new materials and machines and so on. But we didn't create the raw materials that we work with. And that's an amazing thing when you think about it. When you think that there's 300 to 700 planets in the Milky Way galaxy, and then there's another 350 to 500 billion galaxies out there, and we're discovering more through the Hubble and the James Webb telescopes. The universe is expanding. It's just mind-blowing when you think about it.
Wow.
Or that the human genome has 35 billion letters in its name, in its sequence. And all of this is supposed to be the result of random chance, rather than some intelligence behind it. It's just mind-blowing. So I think we've got this incredible capacity to create, and we use it. To not use it would mean that we're not human.
We can't help it, you mean?
We can't help it. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing for us as individuals and for humanity in general. And that needs to be celebrated.
You are listening to Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. We'll return in a moment, with the rest of our discussion.
Ninth Hour Theater Company presents Beauty Will Save the World, a brand new musical audio drama for the whole family. Embark on a seafaring adventure and thought-provoking cautionary tale about the importance of passing on beauty to the younger generation, where relationships once lost are found again, when tested to choose what they stand for and who they will stand with.
Beauty will save the world! I felt it! I've lived it!
Laughter, action, and tears, reminding us about the sacred things that make life worth living. To listen to full episodes or exclusive behind-the-scenes content, go to beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
I want to more than just survive. I want to hope and feel alive. I want to live, truly live.
beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
And now, back to the discussion.
We've got this incredible capacity to create, and we use it. To not use it would mean that we're not human.
We can't help it, you mean?
We can't help it. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing for us as individuals and for humanity in general. And that needs to be celebrated. And it's one of the things that's celebrated in Frankenstein A.I. as it was in the original novel. What happens is that the values or the morality or the ethics that govern that creating, the aspiration behind it, the motivation behind it, that gets disordered, it seems to me. Like there's certain hierarchy of values out there, as Jordan Peterson would put it, and God has handed us a hierarchy of values. And when we comply with those values or honor those values, then I think the result is human flourishing. And when we don't, when we disorder the values, get them out of the sequence that God intends them to be used, or the means or way that God intends them to be used, then bad things can happen. And that's partly the story of Frankenstein and Frankenstein A.I.
Yeah, go ahead, Alexandria.
Also, just kind of go back to one of the first questions that you asked of like, how far is too far? It sounds like it's not necessarily a matter of what it is. It's more what are the values that it's being created in. So it's not saying that this like finite thing that was created is morally bad.
Right.
It's how was it created, and like the values and the how and the why.
And by whom? And by whom?
And by whom.
How it was created and why.
Not what it is.
Well, not what it is. I like that. That's interesting. Yeah, because any creation can be used, presumably for good or bad, depending on its quote unquote programming or whatever, or it's, this is interesting. So it's motivation in creation then matters. Your friend Bill George thinks the motivation in terms of technological advances in artificial general intelligence is ego. And I remember posing to him, or money, right? And he's like, no, ego. So that's interesting. I think humans can create out of hubris and ego, often, I believe. I think
they also create out of, suffering and death is a problem for humanity.
Right.
And I think part of the motivation for many scientists is to, if not alleviate, eliminate the problem of suffering and death.
Right.
And certainly playing God in part is about trying to overcome death, solving the problem of death once and for all, the quest for immortality, the quest for the fountain of youth, right? That we're going to overcome this process of decay and death that all of humanity is subject to. And there is a kind of hubris or pride involved in that, in playing God, that only God has the power over suffering and death, and that somehow we can surpass God, or we can supplant God by coming up with a technological solution to suffering and death. And that's where the playing God theme comes into Frankenstein, as well as Frankenstein A.I. Yeah.
That's interesting. And you made me think too about this. I can totally hear, because I've had so many amazing theological and philosophical conversations in my life with so many different people who believe different things. And I've heard so many great, compelling arguments, for why people don't believe in a God, or a loving or powerful God, certainly. And I could see why it would be easy to conclude that well, God's not doing anything about the poverty, suffering, and sickness in the world. So I'm going to, I could totally see that as being a rational move. If you perceive that, like, well, like someone's got to eliminate poverty because certainly God's not. I can totally see that being, an understandable motivation.
Even an admirable one.
Exactly. And of course, you could make that argument on smaller scale things like there's homelessness in the city. Well, God's not doing anything about it. The churches are not doing anything about it. So I'm going to do something about it or whatever.
Or I'm going to create an android that can.
I'm going to create an android that can. That's right. Yeah. But yeah, so it's very interesting to discuss that. And yeah, again, my realm is not really technology. In fact, I so badly need to update some of the technology I use.
Well, we're all laymen here. We're not scientists or theologians.
No, that's for sure. But I am a creator of many things, and I'm an artist. And so creativity and creation is very important to me. And spirituality is very important to me. Let me ask you guys this. I'll just pivot in a new direction because I'm actually wondering this myself. Being made in God's image, like, Alexandria, you laid it out nicely that there's choice. There's three things. There's sort of like choice, morality, at least the capacity for morality, and relational. Like, I highly value relationships and community and different things, and I grieve over the loss of these things. And I feel deeply that I get that from my relationship with God, my faith, and I feel like I can't help but think that's one of God's primary characteristics is relational, highly relational, cares more about relationships than anything else, in a sense, perhaps more than God's own. Reputation, even. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on so if we're made in God's image and we have choice, and of course many theologians debate whether we have choice or something's laid out for us, predestined, prescripted. Does everything about us today sitting here reflect God's image, or is there sort of like where does biology come into play? Where does family upbringing dynamics come into play? Where does personality come into play? Where does our interests and hobbies come into play? Our preferences, who we are today, how we think, our values, our sexuality, you name it. What about all of that? Is all of that made in God's image? Is all of that a delightful surprise to God, and He loves us, and He loves how He sees us grow and flourish throughout life? Is all of it made in God's image? Like in the Psalms, it says that we're knit together in the mother's womb. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. There's other references about the hairs on our head are accounted for, that God knows our hearts intimately. What do you guys think about that? Like, how much of us and who we are today is a reflection of being made in God's image, or is there some sort of like thing? Is there things that will just naturally develop? Like, what's the core basis of the being made in God's image? My question is very, very convoluted and long, but I know you must have some thoughts on this, Alexandria. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I said it earlier, like definitely like the choice, the relationships, the morality.
Yeah.
All those are in God's image, and then sin marred and can become scarred and can be destructive and all that. But then when it comes to like my personality or like the hairs on my head or the way that I was brought up, I believe that it was all created from God. I know that some others might think believe differently, but I believe that God chose the parents that I would be with. I believe that God chose the siblings I would have. God chose the friends that I would have. And when I would experience certain milestones in my life, like I believe all those things were divinely chosen by God to shape who I am today, to renew me more into his image. I also believe that I have free choice and I have free will.
You could not be friends with one of the friends he's given you. You mean you could choose not to or something? Yeah.
And I believe like I've experienced times where I have felt promptings from God to do something and I've outrightly rejected it. And there's times, and I believe God even takes that into account. He takes my rebellion into account in his divine plan. It's like this weird mystery of God's sovereignty and humans' free will that I won't even begin to like think that I could understand it. But I hold this paradox thinking that I have free choice and free will. And yet I also believe that God is fully sovereign over my life.
Wow. I have this conversation so much with a friend of mine. It's like, we just never get to the bottom of it. And I think I like how you said there's like, it's this mystery. There's a contradiction almost in it, but it's it's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
And
Alexandria.
Paradox. There's a lot of paradox. Which is very hard to resolve, difficult to resolve with a rational mind. It's almost, you're forced to accept the mystery or accept the paradox at some level. And that's beyond sort of cognition, or it's difficult to communicate rationally. It reminds me of this essential question. Are we physical beings having a spiritual experience, or are we spiritual beings having a physical experience? Ooh. So if we're made in the image of God, are we physical first, spiritual first? Are we spiritual beings having a physical experience? Because according to the biblical story, when we die, we are going to come back resurrected as physical beings, but changed. We are going to...
Right. And who knows what that means?
Yeah, I don't know what that means. That's part of the mystery, right? And so if we're made in God's image, you have to think that resurrected body is more in God's image than the body we inhabit today, especially if we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, because our physical experience right now is corrupted. It's flawed deeply by sin, which is... And
pain and so much.
And again, I want to qualify sin being a rebellion or rejection of God rather than compliance with a moral code. It's that too. But to me, it's primarily... a rebellion against God, our heart rebelling against God. So being made in the image of, remember God, again, it comes down to terms and definitions. What do we mean by image, right? Image is a likeness of, it's a looking through the glass darkly, right? It's not fully realized. It's not fully formed. And so I think about that, when if the resurrected body, that will be more like the image of God.
And I loved your question about, are we spiritual beings having a physical experience or physical beings having a spiritual experience? That's going to rack my brain.
Thinking about that one for a while now.
Oh, yes. And then, and one could argue our body is also spiritual. Like there's a holistic aspect of life that's, spiritual. Everything is spiritual. Like you could make that point, I guess, too. No, that's interesting, George, to think about. And what do you guys, so in the play, there's a couple moments where tensions arise between the created, the Adam I, the android, and Frankenstein, the creator. Those tensions I find compelling, because I do think they reflect the tensions of humanity with the creator, God. And the two that are most noteworthy to me is that the android, more or less curses out its creator for not making it with those high values and those morals that everyone is talking about in the play. Like, why didn't you, and I don't have the script in front of me, but like, why didn't you make me like that with those morals and values? And we were talking about that earlier, Alexandria, the propensity to have morality, this capacity to have it. So many people in life have been dealt bad hands and have suffered and have turned out to be moral people, I guess you could argue. And so many other people have suffered and have turned out to be not moral. So many people have grown up privileged and turn out to be moral people. Other people grow up privileged and turn out to be immoral people. And so there's a mystery there in the recipe of what makes a person moral. I mean, certainly, I'm sure people have studied it, and it doesn't like, and of course, in earlier podcast episodes, we were talking about more the formation of morality and how is it possible for an android, a machine, to form morality. And Bill, who wrote George's friend, who George was inspired to write the play by reading some of his papers.
The human biological advantage over AI.
Over AI.
That was Bill's paper that inspired me to write the play.
There you go. Because morality is formed through pain, through suffering, through understanding of hurt, through understanding of pain and hurt and all the things, suffering. Yeah. So, okay. So the android, of course, is asking that question of the creator. And I forget what Frankenstein says to him back, says to Adam I back, but I do remember it being a tension. Well, why did you make me this way then? Basically, the Adam I is saying. And there's certainly a lot of humans that can relate with that question, whether they believe in the creator or not, believe in God or not. And even if they don't believe in God, still screaming up to the sky, angry at how they turned out or who they are for whatever reason. Why did this happen to me? Why did you make the world, this place? I mean, it gets all complex, even as you were talking, Alexandria, about God's sovereignty and all these things. And then you're like, but there's so much of this around me, and there's, and this happens. So I don't know if you remember do you remember what Frankenstein says back to the android?
Yes, he tells him to choose goodness.
To choose goodness.
Yes.
And there we're back to that choice.
And he says, well, how do I do that? He says, well, you're evolving towards goodness. You have your own mind. Reason your way towards it.
And he shouts out that line, it is my right. It is my natural right. Use your natural right. I think it comes in again there,
yes,
maybe.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. It is my natural right.
Right. And that's part of that narrative that we can evolve towards the moral beings that we are today. That's that sort of humanistic or atheistic principle that we can evolve towards morality, towards goodness, towards choosing goodness.
Right. And I don't know. Do people out there believe humanity has gotten better and more moral, or do people believe humanity's less moral? Or does it fluctuate throughout history?
Depends which people you're talking about.
Yeah. So that was the one area in the play, Alexandria, that I was thinking of in terms of, choice and morality. Yeah. And that really gets to your point of the relationship. And then, of course, the other one is the android says, well, asks the creator, what makes humans so great? And Frankenstein answers, I suppose, my relationships. And of course, spoiler alert, Victor Frankenstein is not good at relationships. And so it's a surprising, answer, isn't it? But yet, even Victor Frankenstein, who's very poor at relationships, seems to admit that with a bit of hesitancy, but seems to admit that that's what makes being human great, or that's what makes humans so great. And then, of course,
but don't we all fail at that?
Yes,
pretty
good.
Oh, of course, to some extent.
Yeah, right? we're pretty good at not.
But he fails miserably. Yeah, yes. He's not able to protect his cherished or loved ones, his family, his friends. Yeah, from the destruction of Adam AI.
His creation literally kills some of his family. Yeah. So.
In the book too.
Yeah. So spoiler alert, but not really a spoiler alert, because the book has this.
If you've read the book, it won't be a surprise.
Yeah. So that was the other moment in the play that when it came to like the tensions between a creator and the created, is very relatable. Like, then make me a partner, give me a partner. And I certainly know, lots of single people, where there's frustration with that, right? I believe God has someone for me. I believe that, there's a partner for me. Again, Adam and Eve, where's my Adam? Where's my Eve? Where's my, people relate to that. Why did you make me this way, God? People relate to those questions. And so I think it's also a compelling moment in the play, that the android asks about. So that goes back to that relational thing. So, Yeah. So, what did you think about that part of the play, Alexandria? Did that ring true for you as well? Those moments that those tensions with the creator and the created, did you pick up on that as well when you're reading it or working on it?
Yeah, those tensions for sure about the choose goodness, because like that's hard. Like that, the question is like, can you rationalize yourself to goodness? Because goodness can seem so unrational sometimes.
Tell me more about that. Yeah,
a lot of goodness is putting others before yourself. And to a evolving society, or to even if you don't believe that there's anything after this world, then there would be no rational point to put others before yourself. And so I think Victor's misguiding and part of his moral view or understanding of the world, he doesn't believe there's a creator. It gives off the sense that he doesn't believe in a higher power.
Right.
And so his understanding is that you could choose good, but he's misguided in that, because without the view of something other than ourselves, how could we rationalize ourselves to good? So that one really stood out to me. And then for the relationships, it's very telling that humans are created for relationships. I find personally, like, we're just better people if we have loving
relationships.
Yeah. And
if we feel loved, if we have some people in our lives that we love, right? Yeah. And actually, one of my guests, the minister, I had David Sherwin on. He said, you strip someone down of their relationships, and it's hard. What's left, in a sense, like we are what we are. It's compelling to say our relationships are very important to us.
They're incredibly important. It's also what partly shapes us in this world. Like, I'm a very different person now than like 3 years ago after I met my husband.
Right.
Like, there's just different ways of experiencing his love in my life has shaped me in different ways.
Right.
And I think that sometimes, I know for myself too, we focus so much on the physical relationships that we need to have physical relationship, physical community. And I believe we were created for the physical relationship and community. But one thing that I've really had to learn over the years, especially in like many years of singleness, asking the question to God, why did you create me this way? Or why don't I have my partner yet? Why did you put a desire in my heart for marriage if you're not going to give me marriage? Like that, like for many years of my life, that's what I wrestled with. A
lot of people wrestle with that and relate to that.
It was, and I had a lot of honest, hard conversations with God until I really got to the point of God just saying, like, I am enough for you. Like, you were created to walk with me. And every other relationship that I have is a gift. And praise God, I am married now. But it wasn't until I got to a point where I actually understood that my relationship with God was the most important. That your relationship with the Creator is the most important, because that's going to tell you more about yourself and who you are and what you were designed to do than anything created in your life. So I think relationships are incredibly important. Like, it's important to have community, accountability, love, these things. God designed these things in our world to reflect his nature. But the most important is our relationship with the Creator. And Adamai doesn't have that.
No.
And Victor does not give Adamai the time of day to have that relationship with him, or to teach him, or to guide him, which God so tenderly does with us. God guides us. He teaches us. He takes our hand and he bridges the gap. Jesus literally entered into suffering and died for us. And he did all these things for us so that we could be with him. And yet Victor doesn't for Adamai. And so I understand Adamai's toil, because he needs, if he's going to go towards goodness, he needs his Creator to take him there.
Wow. Such great insight and observations that I didn't even think about in terms of that. Yeah, no, it's just turned on and unleashed into the world, the AI.
Yeah, horrifying.
Yeah. It is horrifying, and we've evolved as artists. Working with the script, right? Originally, we were very sort of like, I guess, angry at the Android, and I think we've come around to realize the Android's just kind of doing whatever it was. Like I like what you said. There's been no guidance. There's been no mentorship that God does, or that people in our lives bearing sort of the image of God are showcasing us and mentoring us and bringing us along. And I'm certainly grateful for lots of people in throughout my life that who've come and gone and you are still around that have taken on those roles of mentorship. And we certainly, everyone, we need that. We need relationships with our peers. We need relationships with older people than ourselves who've been through life and life experiences that we are now going through. We need relationships with young people. We need to have people in our lives that we are mentoring or building into or investing in or giving opportunity for. I think the fact that we value relationships, I would almost argue too, it's universally valued. Like I don't know how many people alive don't value at least like someone in their life. Like everyone seems to have loved ones. Some people are very lonely, I understand, but we seem to understand there's a preciousness to our relationships. And if that's true and we're made in God's image, surely it's all the more true for a relational God.
I think that's the point, though, is being made in God's image, is that we have a grasp of what agape love means, the love of God, and how that orders the world. I'll never forget when I became a Christian halfway through my life, I changed my life completely, changed the kind of work I did. I got married, I became a father. And I remember my daughter was about 5 years old, and I'd been doing my best to understand the Bible, study the Bible, understand the 10 Commandments, understand God's laws and precepts and principles, and try to apply them in my everyday life. And I said to my 5-year-old daughter, maybe she was 6, don't you understand how God loves you? And she says, no, Dad, I can't see God, but I can see you and I know you love me. And it was such a precious moment. And it just, for me, reinforced how important it is to understand the nature of God's love. And when we're modeling that, the impact that has on the world around us, the influence that has on the world around us.
Yeah.
And I just want to illustrate that by going back to the ancient world, where certain behaviors were the norm, like rape, like infanticide, like slavery. These things are abhorred today, okay? They're taboos today, but they were the norm in the ancient world.
Jeez.
And if a child came out and it wasn't perfectly formed, or you didn't want a child at that time, you just threw them on the garbage dump or put them out in the street.
Quasimodo.
Yep. Or handed them to the human traffickers. Slavery was the order of the day in the ancient societies, in the ancient world. And all of that changed when Jesus Christ died on the cross, at least from my understanding of history. That brought in a new order of love into the world, putting God's love at the top of the hierarchy of values, and where the weak were valued, and that we needed to take care of widows and orphans and infants, and that somebody who died in the most shameful, horrific, torturous manner changed the world because of the love that God had for his creation, for humanity and everything that he created. And that was, that for me, I reflect on that regularly, because that turning point in history made such a difference to the peace and prosperity that we enjoy today, where there is very little slavery in the old sense of the term, where there is no more infanticide in the way that it dominated the ancient world, where rape is taboo and it's a criminal act and people are prosecuted for it. I think the world changed fundamentally 2,000 years ago.
Oh, I mean, it's sort of not
for the better.
It's hard to dispute. Yeah.
Well, people do dispute it all the time.
They definitely do. Yeah. And then, and Alexandria, your point about rationalizing towards goodness was interesting to me. And goodness is not something even talked about too much. There's the three transcendentals: beauty, goodness, and truth. Right? Truth is debated and argued about endlessly on a daily basis of what is true, what is real. Many believe there is no truth. That all sorts of plural truths are there, and many believe there's absolute truths. And I've not found it to be the difference between theists and non-theists on that one. Like there's a lot of atheists, people in the science world and stuff that believe in absolutes, and some that don't, and then vice versa. Right? It's sort of like I've noticed that. But yeah, and beauty. I mean, I love talking about the transcendental, the beauty. It's one of the most misunderstood ones, and But then goodness, as you brought up there, Alexandria, and goodness being different than moral. You used it
Compliance
earlier.
with the moral code.
Compliance with the moral code. Goodness being different than that. In other words, it's not sort of like monitoring someone's behavior and what they do, right? In all the groin issues and all these things, but there's a goodness in the agape love aspect of goodness and charity and doing the right thing, being kind, sacrificial love, going out of your way to do something that isn't in your comfort zone, and yet it's going to provide opportunity for someone to be healthier, happier, flourish, be connected, overcome their pain, feel loved, whatever. And that's a real reflection of God's image. And I love what you said. It was your granddaughter, was it?
No, my daughter,
No,
Rihanna.
your daughter, when she said that to you. And then, don't you guys agree too, like, and seeing children like be in their element, like, George, you told me a story about your granddaughter dancing just for fun in the house and just spontaneously, and how much joy it filled you with. And there's got to be something about that is the image of God, like a little child spontaneously dancing, children spontaneously playing with each other. They don't care. They're making up the rules as they go along. There's something about that
organizing their birthday party. Like, don't you think there's something, don't you think as adults we can, if we're going to learn anything from children, it's that playfulness, spontaneity, and trust that seems so beautiful and so natural in a sense, then that's also part of being made in the image of God. Fully agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it says in the scripture that the children will inherit the kingdom of God, right? So it really
the little children come to me.
Yeah, it really values children and their playful spirit. So yeah, definitely.
And what do you feel when you get to go to a workshop and play around and goof off with fellow adults? And sometimes there's youth there and stuff. How do you feel when you get to just be, have fun and play, and yet we're developing this thoughtful piece of art? Like, do you feel something connected there? Do you feel like there's a part of being made in God's image you're living out in that moment that's like precious? Or, I mean, I certainly do. I'm only asking the question because I do. How do you feel about it, Alexandria?
I love the ability to play. I've always loved physical theater. I love exploring things through my body. It was through physical theater that I really found healing through certain areas, like emotionally in my life, of just being able to freely move my body. And so it really holds a dear place in my heart to be able to continue to do that, not out of being healed, but out of freedom.
Whoa.
And so getting to be part of Ninth Hour for multiple productions and in this workshop, it's an incredible experience to get to be with other adults, sometimes youth, but specifically with adults who I know most of them probably come from office jobs, I know myself, sits most of the day, and then getting to come and just move and explore what God designed. I get to explore physically how God designed me in the way that it moves. I get to explore emotionally of how I respond to certain things in a safe environment, because sometimes exploring emotions can be difficult because you don't know how you'll respond. You don't know how someone else will respond, but getting to explore just emotions, getting to explore intellectually and creatively in a room full of people who are also doing the same things. It's very freeing. And it gives also an opportunity to just like share the freedom that I have in Christ to do these things, which I always feel is like the best. One of the best things that I get out of it is just to share the freedom that God has given me. And I've definitely seen it, like hearing people comment about the workshops and about other experiences. It just like a lot of what we hear is it's just freeing. And so like I think just the opportunity of all that just gives like a glimpse of how God created us and how we're meant to just play.
Wow, well said. Yeah, I can't.
Can I just add that? Not just playing, but storytelling.
Yeah.
I've already referred to the grand narratives that most of us live by. And that, the Bible is of course a book of stories.
Right.
And one of the great pleasures or joys in life, and I think we're made in this image, is to tell a story.
Yeah.
And we get to develop a story in the workshop and tell the story through our hands and our feet and our voices and our bodies. And for me as a playwright, to see the words that I've written on a page come alive through these storytellers, through a creative process, it's just wonderful.
Yeah,
it's just
it's
so
very pleasurable.
It really is. It's so stimulating and so joyful.
I've been doing a study through Ecclesiastes, which is an incredible book in the Bible.
Yeah.
Through one of the study guides I was reading, the quote was, "Because we are made in the image of a beautiful God who creates beautiful things, we too are able to create beautiful things in our own creaturely way." And I just love that.
Beautiful.
Just like we get to create beautiful things because our God is beautiful. And yet we're going to do it in a creaturely way. Like, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfection. It's not going to be in the garden of it's very good. It's just going to be beautiful.
Yeah. You always, you put your niece or nephews or grandchild's or daughter or son's kindergarten picture they drew on your fridge and you keep it there forever. I know I have one on my fridge.
I have two on mine.
There you go. And it's really done in a creaturely way. In fact, it's hard to decipher what they drew, but it's beautiful, and you can't help but it's beautiful, even though aesthetically that's not going in an art gallery, right? But it's beautiful nonetheless. And I don't even want to take it off the fridge because they drew it and they drew it for me. And there's something really
from the
beautiful.
Heart. It wasn't out of performance or pride. It was that it came from their heart because they loved you. Yeah.
And you can't go wrong with that.
There's so much life in it, right? Like, remember, we're creating always in the context of suffering and death. None of us can escape that.
Yeah.
It's never going to be perfect for that reason. Okay. It's always created in that context. But the great story is that that's not the end of the story, right? Is that this childlike playfulness, this childlike beauty, this spontaneity, it lives on. Like death has been defeated, okay? And that this nature of God, this image of God, is the one that will persevere. It's the one that is eternal.
Yeah.
And that's, a Ninth Hour's slogan is telling the story, and the is capitalized because it's telling the story of that particular play, that particular story that Ninth Hour as a theater company is putting on. But it's also telling a grand story, the story of human existence and flourishing in life. And it works well for us. And and I know I get such a high off of being in a room filled with people so there's a relational joy there. There's a creative joy. There's a playfulness. And we're intellectual as well. Like, we're deeply thinking about issues that are relevant to our culture and our time. And we're eating at sometimes together. And really it's like, wow, it's such a highlight, of my week, to be in that room with these people and create and develop, an original work, an original play based on a novel that's from 200 years ago, and to have it be so relevant and to have so much conversation around it, and through these podcasts and just the hours of conversation at the workshops themselves, and then the other hours of conversations with people in my life outside of Ninth Hour Theater Company as well, has just been really incredible. I've learned so much over these past several months about humanity and the human experience more than AI in a sense. So, and I think that was always perhaps the design. And we're going to wrap up shortly here. But one final thought I wanted to mention is that I know in my life I feel like I have purpose, and I'm designed for something. You used the word designed earlier, Alexandria. I really liked that. And I know a lot of Christians and theists, believe we're made for a purpose, and and specific people even are like designed for specific vocations or tasks or jobs. I know other people believe that God's design is more general, and it's like we're all designed to love, we're all designed to be in relationships, we're all designed to give, to create. But sometimes, like, it's interesting to talk to people about whether they found their purpose in life or found what I guess, to use the language, what they've been made to do. I've been made to do this, or I feel designed to do this. Like, I feel like everything in my life, whether God destined all the pieces together or not, have come together to formulate this version of myself that feels like absolutely qualified, passion driven, and purpose filled to do this thing. And all your skills, all your experiences, and all that you care about kind of lumps into it. And it just sort of works and stuff. And not many people have that in life. A lot of people don't know what their passions are, what their purpose is, other than, going to their job or maybe their family, to raise their family and stuff. And these are all great things, of course, as well. But to have these deeper designs and plans and purposes, what do you have any thoughts on this, Alexandria? Like, and when we're talking about being made, right, in God's image, like, what are you made for? What are your thoughts on this? Yeah.
Yeah, I used to think that I found my purpose, especially in theater, when I was producing my own shows or acting and doing all that. And I did it I really believe that God gave me that talent, that gift, that excitement to do it. And I believe that was like my purpose, and I was going to pursue that. During a little pandemic that happened, that was taken away from me. And I kind of thought, like, if my purpose is wrapped up in this, it's never going to go well for me, because there's always going to be something that takes it away. My purpose can't be in a tangible item. It can't be in my work or my relationships, because anything in this world can be taken away. So it brought me back to, like, when I was a kid, we would do catechism. And 2 years old, my mom, or probably a little bit older, but my mom says 2, she would ask all of us kids, like, why were we created? And the answer was to glorify God and know him and enjoy him forever. To glorify God and enjoy him forever. So that's my purpose. My purpose is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. And I can enjoy him in theater, but theater is not my purpose. I can enjoy him in my relationships, but my relationships aren't my purpose. It's to glorify God. And so I've been even just diving deeper into that. And I think to even pin it farther, the Great Commission, before Jesus ascends into heaven, he says, go therefore and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I will be with you always to the end of the age. And so I think for this world, for this time and place, my purpose is to glorify God, enjoy him forever. But while I'm in this world, it's to make disciples. It's to share his love. It's to be an ambassador of Christ, so that others can see Christ when they look at me and be reconciled to God, so that they can also glorify God and enjoy him forever. That's my purpose. That is my designed, innate purpose until I'm with God forever. And then I will still get to glorify God and enjoy him forever. That never goes. This world goes. It will be done. It will be over. But what will never leave is my relationship with God. And so that is my divine purpose. And I try to bring that into everything that I do, the way that I create, the way that I pursue my relationships, the way that I love. It's always to glorify God and enjoy him forever.
Okay. So in answering my question, it's sort of like if you made for something super specific or made for something broader that really, all people could be made for. Yeah. Like you're more now in the vein of thinking the latter, because in the world, certain things can be taken away from you to fulfill such a specific purpose.
I believe that God also created different talents for me, so that I could glorify him in specific ways.
Right.
But my purpose isn't in that. So like, I believe that I can glorify God in my acting or in my hospitality, but my purpose isn't in my acting or my hospitality.
Gotcha.
So they definitely go hand in hand, but where my purpose is derived from is in my relationship with God.
Right. Right. What about you, George? What do you think? What are you made for? You know?
I think in one word, storytelling. I think I've always had a penchant for storytelling, some talent in that area. I'm certainly not bragging about it. And so I think storytelling and storytelling in a way that, according to a hierarchy of values, truth, goodness, and beauty. And I hope that my stories will get people to think about the story they're living by, and that my stories will point them to at least consider the biblical story and to consider that they are made in the image of God, and what that means for them personally, as well as the larger community that they're involved with.
Nice. Just to end up then, is there any last things you want to leave the audience with? Any short sort of summary you just want to like leave people with as we end today's podcast? Alexandria?
Yeah, sure. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you guys. I love talking about this kind of stuff, especially creation. I would just say to the listeners that, be curious, create, explore, be open your eyes to what's already being created or creating in the moment. Like when you go out into nature, like just observe creation is what we call it, and observe even just the pictures on the wall, or observe what's created and just enjoy it. And also have your hand at creating something. I believe that it's something that we were designed to do, whether it's creating a new recipe or just drawing a horribly sketch, put it on your fridge. Whatever it is, just try creating something, because I really do believe there's a part of us that is meant to create.
Thanks, Alexandria, for joining us today.
Thank you.
That was Alexandria Poskus, who is one of the performing artists involved in the development of Frankenstein A.I. George, any last thoughts for our listeners today?
Well, I'll just pick up on what Alexandria said. I think observation is an essential activity, both in science and in art. Observe the reality around you. And then I just want to echo what she said. Go out and create. If you're already creating, create more. But create with more self-awareness. Why are you creating? What's your motivation? What are the values that govern what you're creating? And think about what inspires you to create. And if you haven't created before, try it at the very simplest level. That playful, spontaneous child. See what comes out of that spontaneous, playful, trusting, faithful little child, and start there.
Well said. Thanks for joining me today, George.
Always a pleasure.
George Dutch is the playwright of the brand new theatrical work, Frankenstein A.I., being developed by Ninth Hour Theater Company. This has been the Telling the Story podcast. I'm your host, Charlie. This has been Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theater Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing a brand new theatrical work, Frankenstein A.I. You can listen again to this episode and all our podcasts through YouTube, Spotify, and directly on our website, ninthhour.ca. Be sure to follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter to be the first to receive exciting announcements, opportunities, and behind-the-scenes content. We hope you'll join us again soon on Telling the Story.